Welcome back to Motors and Medicine. On today's episode, I'm actually out in the garage, as you can tell, and I'm working on the 2018 Mustang this time. So, quick, brief introduction as to why I'm working on the car is that, as you guys know, this car had been highly modified, and the engine makes a little over 900 horsepower at the crank, just under 800 horsepower at the wheels. And I knew that my catalytic converters, which are still stock and still on this car, were living on borrowed time. And as I was driving, this was back in, I want to say probably November, when I put the car away for the winter time. My check engine light came on, and after doing a little research, I came to find out that my cats are at the end of their life cycle. And mainly the reason for that is because the cats were just never intended to harness that kind of power. They just weren't intended for that kind of flow and that kind of power. So what I've done, obviously, if you can see here, you can see that I've got my car lifted. I've got the stock exhaust removed. This is the piece that had to get removed. These headers are a real pain to take off, the original headers, but you can see now, this is what I'm going to be replacing it with. And what I chose was a shorty header. And the reason for that is because I still want to remain emissions legal. And so there's only one company that I'm aware of on the market that sells catalytic converters that are street legal, EPA legal, and will support a ton of horsepower. And that company is called GESI. So I'm going to show you the catalytic converter, what it looks like. And this is it right here. This catalytic converter is the G Sport Gen 2 version for 2017 and newer vehicles. And it can support up to 800 horsepower per bank. So this one catalytic converter can support 800 horsepower by itself. And so what my plan is to keep this street legal, I'm going to do some fabricating on this header here. Actually, what I'm going to do is actually remove this piece from the catalytic converter, from this old cat. I'm going to remove this piece here, this flange that's got the bolts on it. We're going to cut here and weld it on to the new catalytic converter. So essentially it's going to look like this. This flange is going to get welded, after it's cut, it's going to get welded here. That way this catalytic converter can then be bolted here to the new shorty header. And the shorty header has a provision for an O2 sensor. Unfortunately, this O2 sensor, the rear O2 sensor, was actually embedded in the cat itself, but that's not going to work with this high performance cat here. So what we're going to do instead, I'm going to be here in the pipe. I'm going to be cutting a hole, drilling out a hole, and then putting in an O2 sensor bung and welding that in. That will satisfy all the emissions standards that are necessary to pass emissions, but it's going to increase flow by a ton compared to what this old system was flowing. The good news is that the car will still be street legal, it'll still pass emissions, and it's probably going to pick up a good 30 horsepower total, probably about 15 horsepower per bank would be my guess. But it might pick up more than that. I don't really know, because the diameter of the stock header is, I want to say 1.5 inch pipe, and the diameter of the pipe on the shorty header is 1.75 inches. So it's got a little bit more diameter. It's going to increase the flow, and the design is much cleaner. Not to mention, it's a each individual runner has its own pipe. Whereas on the stock header, there's these two cylinders share one pipe, and the other two share another, and then they meet in the cat. It's just not a good way to get good flow. So this bottleneck is going to be eliminated. And once I've got the fabrication done, I'm going to be taking some pictures of that. And this is going to be kind of like a stepwise approach, and it's going to take some time to get this project done. But I've got a friend who knows how to TIG weld and is going to do some of the fabrication for me and help me get everything set up. But hopefully this system will work and work exceptionally well, so that I can have a lot more flow, a lot more power, but not have to worry about these cats blowing up. Because these cats, even though technically right now they're not completely dead, eventually over time these cats are just literally going to get burned out, because there's just not, these cats just weren't designed to flow as much air as that supercharger puts out. So hopefully with this new setup, I'll be able to have a much better exhaust system. It's probably going to sound a little bit better, but more importantly is I'll be able to run that power without risking damaging the engine, because the catalytic converter broke and blocked the travel of exhaust gases and whatnot. So anyway, we're gonna move on to the next step and I'll pick it up from there. Okay, so now we're at the step where I've removed all of the exhaust components from this Mustang, and basically the stock headers and cats. And what I did was, after I took all that off, I headed over to a friend's house who happens to be a fabricator. And what we did was cut off the old cats and reused a little bit of the piping. And then I took a brand new set of shorty headers and a set of GESI EPA legal catalytic converters that are high flow. As far as I understand, GESI is the only catalytic converter manufacturer, at least in North America, that sells a catalytic converter that is both EPA legal and also durable to stand up to all the extra horsepower that this car puts out. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick walk over the old exhaust system and what that looked like, and then what the new system is going to look like. And you'll be able to see all the new components. So here we go. So we'll start here. This is the old components here. This is the driver and passenger side header and the catalytic converters for each. And then we move on to the new, these are JBA shorty headers. And basically they have been fitted with these GESI cats. I actually took this flange right here that you see off of that old cat right there, and we welded it onto this cat here, and then just finished doing the finish work here with the welds. Put in O2 sensor bunks for the rears, and this is how it tails out. So now the next step is to get back under the car and start installing those headers with the supplied hardware. I may reuse the old gaskets because they're in great shape, but I need to see what the new gaskets look like, kind of get a comparison as far as quality. And then once I get that installed, then we'll move on to the next step. But I'm basically going to get under the car, and then I'm going to show you guys what that install looks like and how difficult it can be. While I'm under there, I'm going to describe the difficulties I had just taking this stuff off. It's actually quite a tedious project to do header removal and install on one of these S550 Mustangs. If any of you out there are familiar with this car or familiar with how difficult it is to do these headers, takes several hours just to get the stuff off. So it's going to take quite a bit of time just to get it back on, but hopefully not as much time, because I'm thinking about just using hardware that's supplied instead of using the studs that come with this car, because the studs make it difficult to get the header in and on and off, I should say. But basically, I'm just going to get to that point. I'm going to get under the car, show you guys how the install goes, and we'll go from there. All right, so as you can see here, I now have the, try to back the camera off. I now have this driver's side header installed. Bolts still need to be tightened all the way, but you can at least see, kind of get a good impression of what it looks like here. Right against the block. Fits, clearance is nice. Clearance on this back pipe is nice. You can see my high flow cat there by GESI. So we'll continue on. All right, so I'm back here. Now I'm under the car and I'm on the driver's side, and I'm gonna just kind of pan out, show you here. This is the new pipe, the new cat, and the headers. And we're looking to get up here into the, let's see if I can put some light in there. We're looking to get right up in here. Put this gasket down and get the header up in there. So I'm gonna attempt to get that started, and then once I have a couple bolts in, then I'll pan back in so you guys can see it. All right, guys, we're back. I'm underneath my Mustang one more time, just to show you guys the finalized installation of the new headers and the new race cats. And I had to do some different motor mount brackets as well so that I could fit these headers because they're larger diameter than the stock. So I'm just going to kind of pan here. You can see the pipe, and then you can see the cat right here. Up in here, you can see the motor mount bracket, and then you can kind of see the headers right through here. There's the bracket over here. All that's been back installed. Over on this other end, we've got the pipe here as well. And then same thing here. Motor mount bracket, header, new race cat. So hopefully you guys can see that pretty well. Hopefully it's not too dark. Pan there one more time. So now the next step here is just to get the rear section of the exhaust installed, and then I should be able to fire this car one more time, and we'll see how it runs and make sure that it doesn't have any check engine lights or anything, and we'll go from there. So we'll get to that point. All right, so back in the garage, finishing up on my 2018 Mustang. Just wanted to do a quick recap. I had the car up on jack stands and partial lift, I guess, to take care of some changes that needed to be done. As I mentioned in the previous segment, my car basically threw some check engine lights, and come to find out that the catalytic converters on this car were starting to go out, which is a very common problem when you run a big supercharger like I am. They're just not meant to be pushing that much power through those cats, so you kind of have to make some changes. Well, as you can see, the car is back down on the ground there. I'm going to flip the camera around so that you can see all the parts that came off of it. You can see here the old headers, cats, motor mount brackets, and I even changed out the drive shaft. At this point, running the headers that I'm running, they are 1 3/4 inch in diameter. The stock headers, I believe, were like 1 1/4 inch. So the headers that I just replaced obviously flow a lot better than the stock ones. And then of course the cats that I chose are GESI catalytic converters meant for 2017 and newer vehicles. And they can support up to 1,200 horsepower per bank. So it's actually a really high performance race cat, but it's also green and street legal as well as EPA legal, so it'll pass emissions. The motor mount brackets I changed out primarily because the original brackets, the ones that you just saw there on the ground, they are very bulky and take up a lot of space. And so I switched those out for a set of BMR motor mount brackets that are adjustable, so that if I wanted, I could lower the engine 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever I want. And I kept the engine stock location for now, but if I ever want to change it, it's not hard. There's just some simple shims that can be removed. But what I like about it is that there's a lot of space so that I could work with this area. And it was a lot easier to install the headers and just get the bolts on. Installing headers on these S550 Mustangs, it's a really tedious task. I mean, it takes a lot of time, several hours, and you have to have enough clearance. And having these new BMR motor mount brackets just made it easier to get everything bolted back on and get the headers snugged up. But at the end of the day, I really liked the way everything fit. The headers were by JBA, and those headers fit perfect. I chose shorty headers because I wanted to keep the catalytic converters, the race cats that I bought, I wanted to keep them as close to the stock locations as the original cats were, so that it wouldn't affect the tune at all, and it wouldn't affect the efficiency of the cats themselves. And so there's a lot of guys who have Mustangs like this and they go straight to long tube headers, whether those long tube headers have cats or not. But it changes things a little bit. You have to have a good tune, because when your cats are moved further back downstream, it changes the efficiency of the cat, obviously, but it also changes the tune, and or it requires that you change the tune so that you're actually, those cats are actually working as they should. Many of these guys don't even bother with cats because at that point, they just are looking for more power. I was trying to find a good compromise between efficiency, power, and just still keeping the car street legal, because I still like to drive the car, and here in Utah, we have to pass emissions. So I did something that was a little bit different. Most people, like I said, will do long tube headers. What I did was short tube headers, and then just had custom downpipes created where a friend of mine did some TIG welding, and he welded the cats to the new headers, and then we welded some intermediate pipe after those headers so that I could still keep the exhaust system the same length as it was in stock form. And it all worked out really well, as you've seen in the previous segment. But at this point, I just wanted to let you know that the car has been running great. I haven't had any issues. It's definitely louder with those short tube headers. I didn't realize how much it was going to affect the noise level, but it definitely got louder. And it flows better because I feel, just seat of the pants, I kind of feel a little bit more mid-range and top end power when I'm doing wide open throttle hits and pulls. But outside of that, I'm kind of grateful that I went ahead and changed the drive shaft as well, because the original drive shaft, again, it's just a stock piece. And although I'm not drag racing the car, I like to do roll racing with it. It doesn't get as much stress, but I was worried that at some point maybe that stock drive shaft might break. So I installed a one-piece aluminum drive shaft from the drive shaft shop. It's really light. It probably cut the weight of the drive shaft by half at least. I considered a carbon fiber piece, but man, those are really expensive. And I don't know if it's worth the return as far as investment goes. But I was really pleased with just the aluminum drive shaft. It works awesome. It works perfect. So now, really what I wanted to do at this point was just kind of do a quick start of the car, just so you guys can see what the car sounds like now, cold start. Much louder than it was before, and we'll go to that point. All right, so now I've got the camera situated right behind the car. I'm just gonna do a quick cold start to see, so that I can show you guys how much louder it is from the cold start itself. And then we'll end the video there. So hopefully this works out pretty well. So as you can hear, that is extremely loud, several decibels louder than it was before. And in fact, I kind of find myself now driving it in the quieter modes. Unless I'm gonna race it, I just don't see the point of running it so loud, just because it's so loud now that it literally wakes the dead. I do love having a loud car, but sometimes I just kind of want to have it a little bit more quiet when I'm cruising. But you know, hopefully that shows and demonstrates, you know, how you get these headers installed. I mean, I didn't do a complete how-to, but I just tried to show you that it is something that if you wanted to do it, you could do it yourself. You just need a good set of tools. You need to be able to lift the car high enough that you can gain access to everything. Biggest challenge for me was just when you get everything disconnected from the exhaust, and you have to remove things like the starter, and you have to disconnect the steering rod, and then you have to make sure that the engine and transmission are supported by a special jack so that it's lifting, because once you disconnect those motor mounts, you can literally start lifting the engine up and get everything removed. But at that point, there's nothing supporting the engine except for this jack. And that's the only thing that made me a little bit nervous, but it worked out great. I didn't have any problems. Once I got that set up, I was able to have enough clearance to remove motor mount brackets and all the headers. The most challenging part was, again, finding the right angles to get all of the bolts tight, installed and tightened or fastened for the headers. Once that was done, everything else just came together really quickly. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do so to help the channel. And then on the next video, I'm going to be jumping back into working on the Bronco. We're going to do some paint chip repair, see how that goes. And until next time, this is Motors and Medicine signing off. Thanks.